So, parallel track technical session we call to order social protection, the role of female agents in last mile services and bridging the gap. And this is technical session 13. We are in Hall B of this Ashoka Hotel. And we start on a little introduction. According to government estimates, there were 463 million PMJDY account holders. Of these, 55.6%, and that is 257 million, are women. However, there are just about 8 to 10% of women agents for servicing these women customers. Evidence from other countries suggests that female agents can play an important role in bridging the gender gap in access to services. There are several agent models operational in the country today, leveraging existing frontline workers, female self-help groups, members, village entrepreneurs, and CSC operators. This session, being hosted in partnership with LEAD at Career University, will discuss the models for engaging female agents in last mile service delivery, individual and contextual factors that influence their performance, including training, sufficient incentives, and how technology-based models can work at the grassroots to promote access to financial services and social protection. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm round of applause as I have the privilege in inviting the moderator of this session, Ms. Sharon Buthu, Executive Director, LEAD at Career University. A warm round of applause to you, ma'am. And our speakers are Gayatri Shanmugam, co-founder and CEO of Hakdashak, who's here, Amit Arora, Senior Rural Financial Advisor, World Bank, Tanya Pal, Associate Director, CRISIL Foundation, Ajit Agarwal, Lead Development and Advocacy, India, Women's World Banking. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. And the session has been called to order, and I hand you over to the moderator of this session, who will now take over and finish the session by 12:45, maximum 1 o'clock.
Hello, thanks everybody. Welcome to our session. There's never an ideal time, whether it's in the middle before lunch or in the morning or after lunch. I think it's always, anyway, good to see the crowd. Happy to see everybody after a long time for COVID. And we're particularly happy to do a panel on an interesting topic that's been around for a long time. This morning, I'll present a study that we've done with Hardashak that looks at a different way to explore the BC model, the last mile delivery, sort of like channels as well. This has been a topic that's been discussed at length. And I had mentioned to some of the panelists that this is a scary topic because it's very wide, very studied, but still so many challenges that need to look into. So I'll present some just very key insights on the Hardashak model that utilizes as well the same principles of last mile delivery of using self-help group models, and try to extend another topic which is highly debated, is how to increase social protection to the last mile. So tap into several needs and complex challenges at one. So I don't think I need to say the importance of agent-based models as well, understanding how to identify through self-help groups as well. So I'll skip this slide. I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the study we've done. So the ideal is that we looked at what is the impact of the Hardashak model on the monthly incomes and socioeconomic empowerment. What motivates the self-help group members? This selection and identification process, which is always a dance to understand. People might select in two, but they might not be the best people to do it. How do you identify the good people? And what is the impact on citizens' knowledge and access to social protection? So the ideal was to empower women, but as well solve another problem of ensuring social protection to the last mile. Quickly to explain the Hardashak model, and I'll let Gayatri if I articulate something that's not wrong, and I know the model has evolved since we've evaluated. So the ideal is that to select women from self-help groups, we collaborated with Chhattisgarh, the Behind program there. So we selected women from self-help groups that were eligible for training for the Hatch model. So the Hatch model is an application where these women help people in villages to understand which schemes they're entitled to and how to get them and register them, inform them. So the ideal is that first, after the selection for the training, there is a training component. So this is to explain to women in the areas how the model works, how to get people, how to understand the application. And after that, there's a post-training evaluation. So this was one model. Oh, I forgot to add as well, the critical component of one of the selection for training is understanding if you have a cell phone. And the reason why they chose Chhattisgarh is there is a geo program with Bihan where a lot of women receive mobile phones. So it is an ideal situation to see how we can leverage that. So going back, so once the women receive training, there's an evaluation, post-training evaluation. So there was 5,078 women that were trained. At the end, post-evaluation, if you do not pass, you're not eligible to become Hadashak. So that's one way to try to identify the correct set of women. 3,600 women remain. And from that, women were trained to reach out to people in their villages and their communities to see if they're interested in understanding if they're eligible for government schemes. And it's against a fee. So the fee could be up to 40 rupees for each transaction. So they would come and they would say maybe a mother of the household to say you would be eligible for X scheme, or if you need some government documents like PAN card, etc. The Hadashak would help them get the documents as well. So there's an application process submission, and then the benefits are received. The Hadashaka are not responsible of ensuring the beneficiaries got all the benefits because they don't have no agency over that part, but submission to the CSCs and things like make sure the documents were there was well within the reach. So we looked at agents across Chhattisgarh, a bit of distribution. Just to understand a bit the profile of these Hadashikas that were selected, remember there was a selection process with sort of like an exam. The first iteration of selection is they need to have a mobile phone. The second one, they need to pass training, be available for the training and be present. Third, they need to pass the evaluation. And once they went through that phase, then you could become an Hadashika. So the median age is 30. 84% are self-help group leaders themselves. So also notes to the nature of probably women who may be more a little bit entrepreneur spirit to do. 67 have passed 11th grade. This is an important number. 73% belong to the BPL household. And the monthly income, the personal monthly income has been 1,000, 3,000 rupees. So almost 3/4 of the sample is within the 1,000 to 3,000 rupee range. More than half were part of self-help groups, and 87% are married. So this is sort of like the context of what they did. So when we looked at the impact on the agent income, so this was a study of about 7 months. I'll show you a little bit after a bit how long people were there and things like that. But overall, the insights is the impact on the agent income is the proportion of people in the lowest income level, those are people who less than 1,000 rupees, drops by 5 percentage points. That means that they graduate to the next level between 3 and 8,000. 1,000 to 3,000, where the bulk is. Then you have proportion of people in 3 to 8,000 rupee group rises by 28%. So while these are good numbers, you need to remind that these two buckets are sort of like at the end, like at both sides of the average. So the average women are between 1,000, 3,000, and we see a lot of effects between people below that and the people above that. So there's some translation there. The average personal monthly income is 26% higher for agents who work for at least 1 month. So we notice as well a lot of attrition. So I think a third of the sample dropped off even after less than a month. So that's one of the caveats of sometimes of these delivery models. There could be different components. Impact on agent empowerment level. So when we ask them where they qualify, so proportion of response reporting a low level of socioeconomic drops by 20%. So people feel more empowered just as a perception. And before the pre-post study, there was nobody that reported high level of socioeconomic empowerment. And now, after the study, 8% reported. So there's some visibility of people having the perception that they've actually have some greater socioeconomic empowerment. From the study, there was a lot of learnings as well. So one of the critical components, identification and training. So we looked at the performance and the role of training modality. A portion of the study was done during COVID. That also means that you could not be in person in villages, while the villages themselves remain active and not necessarily in full lockdown like some of the urban areas was. The ability for the cadres from Hadashak to go train women in villages was very limited, so they shifted to online. So we looked at a comparison. People who were trained offline, like a direct touch with people, perform better and or higher performance compared to online. I think one could be the form of training, but having seen also how these trainings are done, I would assume that there's a lot of cross-learning. So these are women are together, and someone who's teaching, you can also learn from the person below you and things like that, beside you, and there's a lot of discussion. So that didn't happen online. So that's one form of modality that we think that can impact performance. We also looked at high-performing agents. So one thing is that there's huge amount of people who drop off some of these models, lower end of performance, but there's also a significant, almost a Pareto model where 20% are high performers, and what characterizes them. So they're significantly older, they're more likely to have an education up to grade 10, 12. They have leadership positions. And we have another paper that we looked at as well. We did a sort of like a propensity score for mental health and well-being. So we asked a set of indicators. So women who are more relatively better in mental health by a set of indicators of well-being, they perform better as well. So it also highlights, the conditions by, people work and what's important to them. Looking at the low activity and dropouts, I think that's one of the key aspects of this. A lot of models that repeat in business correspondence, whether this one as well. There's 738 out of the 3,600 that were less than a month. So inadequate training, lack of work support, other paid work, alternative modes, application phone-related issues, family constraints, etc. So these are actually normal issues that we have seen repeated. And agents who worked for at least a month and dropped out. So very similar types of constraint or reasons why they would have dropped out. When we ask women what motivates them, so everyone is seeking regular, higher pay work. So I think the component of regular is quite highlighted there. So while these types of models are good, there's not necessarily a steady stream of income. So there's a limited amount of schemes that one villages need at one time, for example. So maybe it should be combined with other sources as well. So the thing of regular higher pay work is critical for women to adhere to this. The twin mobilization, there's a huge sense of being a benefactor in a village, though. A lot of the Hardashikas really motivated by social service and self-service. So being able to help someone in your village to attain social service, get their PAN card where they're not able to, provides immense satisfaction with women. And in often some cases, these women are not charged for the fee or their time they were doing it when they were. The impact of the model on agents and citizens. So the average agents were active for 5 months out of the 7 months. The average earnings of the month is 587, which is a huge distribution because this is an average. 3.3 lakh applications were submitted, and those translated in 2.5 lakhs applications translated into benefits, and we approached about 2 lakh citizens reach. What was most popular in the schemes? The Kubshan Bagal Swasthya. I'm not very well versed in, I have not managed to imagine this, so I'll let people read those. The top document is PAN card, Aadhaar card, caste certificate, death certificate, domicile certificate, income certificate. And by and large, PAN card was the first service that people wanted. So I think this is just a very cursory look of a very intense study that was done with Hadashak in collaboration with SRLM Chhattisgarh. But some of the key things that we noted, improving retention, engagement, and sustainability of last mile models, engaging women. So building trust. I think this is a word that we use often, but it still need to be integrated agent as cards within the existing community. Having an institutional architecture to support this. High touch outreach, very important to, I think one aspect is once the Hardashikas were trained, they were sort of like left for them to engage in their own community. So I know there was WhatsApp groups between Hardashikas that were independent. So there's organic ways, but having high touch ability and women to, even if they're like sort of entrepreneur, they need to be attached to some type of institution. Leveraging local organizations such as village organization and platform integration, I think, because sometimes there's like fragmented processes which made it difficult, even if they did the effort, they were not able to get the benefits. So I'll leave it there. I think sometimes these types of presentation leave more questions than answers and insights. And I want to discuss a little bit questions with our panel coming from a diverse sector. Yeah. Great. I think we're almost. So I'll start with you, Amit. Yeah. So I think, Amit, I think you're known to have studied this model as well, and you have a lot of experience in the banking correspondent model, which also leverages sort of like the same channels and networks, and we see some of the similar things. But what I wanted to highlight, and we highlighted a bit some of the components of the what works. So I think those are one of these buzzwords these days. What works for last mile delivery systems, and how can we build on those? That would be my first question to you in comparison to what you've seen and some of the work we've done with Hadash.
Sure. Thanks, Sharon. In this business, it's easier to say what doesn't work than to say what works. So I'll try and balance the both. What doesn't work is more visible. That's why it's easier. Uh, and it also is depends upon the context. You know where X may work, Y may not work. So there are various variables there. But for sure, this is my strong belief and partly attributed to the experience, the 10, 12 years of journey in this space. Empathy works, affinity works. For example, the collectives, groups. These they may they're like softer elements and get missed, but this works considerably well, both or let's say on the revenue side and otherwise also. So the social aspects are very important, which gets missed out in the number. I'll give some examples. We've just recently completed a study with CGAP team. My colleague Anand from CGAP has led this. Studied this in Bihar. So from that study also, and from the larger database that we track of women agents, uh, how a women self-help group agent gets selected is very interesting. So it's not somebody who knocks the corporate VC's door or a bank's door and say, I want to be your agent. So it's a collective process in a group meeting. They figure out who's better off for, I mean, in terms of skill set, and will be able to do this job by virtue of her appetite, interest, past experience. And that's how this nomination happens, and then banks come into the picture and corporate VC. So that as a starting point itself helps a lot. She has the confidence of that community because she's more like a nominated person and then goes through the paperwork. That helps a lot, and which means empathy and so on and so forth, affinity. But coming back to empathy, what we saw from this study, these women agents that we studied are working in far deeper geographies, where usually the mainstream agents attrition is high, revenues are low, work is difficult, so he moves on to the next best job. But these women agents stay put. Attrition is low, and interestingly, they work harder, do more transactions, earn less, and good part of their transactions they do by visiting a disabled community member. So it's more effort, more time consuming. Revenue is not different, but they still do that. So this works. Another example I can give is what we saw wherever passbook printing is available. The footfalls are much higher. That works. Unfortunately, that's not available across the spectrum. Perhaps interoperability can make this happen. Sunilji, we've been discussing this, but it seems to be a long shot. So these are elements which really work because confidence is still an issue. Third, I've often been asked this question: does it help to have women VC agent? So it's a mixed bag, and the latest study we did doesn't indicate this. Whether you're a male agent or a female agent, we saw two-thirds of the customers were females. So that was probably because of the geography, because they were far more empowerment, they had an underlying use case, or maybe there was inward remittance, men were sending money and women were withdrawing money. Combination of these things. But if I step back and go back 3, 4 years, uh, what we saw, the customers, the women, potential customers who were not transacting, who didn't have an account, if you start with the women agent in those geographies, their onboarding is faster, easier, their confidence building happens. Then, over a period of time, and that's what we discovered 3 years down the line, it doesn't matter whether the agent is a male or a female. So, the design has to be such contextual, which will help. I can go on and on. I'll pause there, maybe for some more details later.
Great, thanks. I was so immersed in what you're saying that I forgot who will speak next. So that'll be great. I have a quick question for you, Amrit. You just came, sorry, yeah, Amrit. You'll have to tell me how you scale empathy after. That's a very good insight. So I actually I'll go to Gayatri because just to go back to some of the harder shark work. First, I want to say congrats for the recent investment from Shark Tank. That's quite, actually, it's very interesting to see the private sector and investors banking on this model, actually. So it reached a certain level of growth. So what would it take to work with the government and private sector to enhance this model? And based on the what works that Amit is mentioning, how do you take that and run with it and make it done?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a great experience being at Shark Tank. Uh, I think what Amit was saying, our learnings and observations have been slightly different. Uh, we are in this space of social, welfare entitlements. I think slightly different from the BC world. Empathy is definitely, underlying thread there too, um, and trust in the community that the woman agent has. So those are all the common. So, can you hear me? All right. So, some of the common points are the empathy factor, the trust factor. Absolutely agree with those. But I think our experience so far, and we are just about 7 years old now here in the space. Attrition is still very high, and it does matter whether I have a male agent or a female agent. I If I have a female agent, definitely our beneficiaries are more females, right? That's what we have seen, because that's how they work. They automatically reach out to more female agents. There's already the trust that's established and all of that. So those are some probably differing points between social entitlement and BC and the demand per se, right? Who wants to do a cash in, cash out versus who wants to get a pension scheme, right? So that's that. But in terms of working with the governments, I think some of the learnings for us has been, of course, capacity building, right? Which you also pointed out in your presentation, right? And I completely agree with you. There is a whole lot of difference between, whether you're training online or offline. Um, of course, offline is any day more effective, the engagement is better, but also there's a question of scale, right? How do you then scale up the offline model? That's where technology has to play a larger role. So then that takes me to the next point of the focus on data. When we work with large ecosystem partners, including the government, how do we bring data to the fore of all the conversations that we do? That's why Hak Darshak is a tech driven model, right? And we our data, unlike the BC network, it's not a given, right? We'll have to put in that effort to collect the data, which is what the Hak Darshak app is all about. So, how do you dashboard that? How do you present the data? How do you analyze? How do you slice and dice? That becomes a key element when we work with, with governments. And so apart from capacity building and data, I think the buy-in from the government and the top-down approach, right? All said and done, while we are working at the grassroots, a top-down approach makes that implementation much faster, right? A buy-in from the SRLM, unit, a buy-in from we work with SRLM in Chhattisgarh. We work with SRLM in MP, Madhya Pradesh. We have scaled from 3 districts to 13 districts to now 26 districts in Madhya Pradesh, all with the SRLM cadre, right? Wouldn't have been possible if the buy-in was not there from top, because I have examples on the other side also where projects did not take off or did not fare well because that buy-in did not happen, right? So that top-down approach, when we work with governments, is extremely important. Continuous engagement with the network is important. Again, we are doing a lot of experiments with tech to make that engagement happen on an ongoing basis to reduce our attrition, because attrition is a problem in our space. So some of the other things that I'll probably touch upon later is about the earning potential, how much do they earn, and how do you then make that better. That we'll talk about that slightly later, but these are some of the aspects that we need to keep in mind when we work with a large ecosystem partner, especially someone like the government.
Great. Thanks a lot, Gayatri. That's quite interesting. I'll pass it on to Tanya from CRISIL Foundation. I think thinking about innovative ways, we talk about the role of training for last mile delivery, and I think CRISIL Foundation has a very particular training of cars through their Men Pragati program. I think if you can elaborate on that and how that really changes the way or is different from what are the other financial literacy program, and what is the impact of that? Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Sharon. So definitely I will touch upon what Amit said, Gayatri said. But to highlight one thing, I think what our program has been deliberating upon is building the knowledge on finance. So knowledge on finance is very important, and particularly when we look at women, they are wanting to do on their own, but yet they encounter several hurdles they have to encounter. And women, and as earners and as savers, they while they are while they are earning and while they are saving, they seldom find themselves in control of their finance. And that's where, we thought that finance, knowledge on finance is a very, very important element to enable the women, the lady of the family, to take part in the decision making process. So, her being able to take part in the household level decision making process means we enhance her capacity to be able to contribute, which means that she is provided with sufficient knowledge about what her personal financial status is, her household financial status is, what are the products which are available, how should she use it, because not necessary if you have financial access, so you will have access across. And as we see, we have been working through Mayor Pragati program, we have been working across Assam and Rajasthan, and it's been almost 6 to 7 years more than that. So we have seen that there are various access points. So in Rajasthan, we have the e-Mitra points. In Assam, we see the BC, CSC. But while you have access to finance, not necessarily you know how to the usage of the product, or what product I should rather choose, which is going to be good for my family. So coming to the point of Mayor Pragati, so Mayor Pragati, I think what actually helped CRISIL Foundation is, we being a corporate social responsibility, we have been able to, experiment and then, actually scale it up. So that's one advantage which we get. And of course, we have always gone ahead with what we know best, which CRISIL stands for. So in Mayor Pragati, what we did is that we took Mayor Pragati program over 2 phases. We launched it in 2015 in Assam. And in the initial phase, we had our frontline workers known as CRISIL Mitras. And we had given them the responsibility to go and consistently be in touch with the beneficiaries. And we had termed it as a life cycle approach. So over a period of 4 months, consistently be in touch with the beneficiaries and take them through a complete structured process, where we started off with financial literacy workshops, financial literacy trainings, through various interesting, education and entertainment model. And then move on gradually to a camp level model, where you can bring in other service providers to link them with the products. And then you move into a financial counseling piece. So what we also did, along with having very interesting toolkits using adult learning principles, we also came up with an application which is more to do with the financial counseling, wherein we studied the household level finance, and we captured that data through an Android application, and it dished out a financial health card. And it is actually a color coded card. And when we go to the villages, we always ask them, they don't know it is a financial health card. Because that's where the journey for towards their personal household level finance starts. So what we call out for is that you have that card जिसमें color है, हरा color है, लाल color है. If you can take out that card, so it's a color coded card which actually tells you on 7 parameters what is the status in terms of saving, loan, insurance, and then how you work upon this to improve your household level finance. And that's where this consistently, this kind of approach over a period through multi touch point activities, that's what builds in the knowledge, information, and then the usage happens through, it's a informed decision making process which the lady of the family eventually ends taking up. So that's the process we followed. And post this, that was phase 1. In the phase 2, we moved on with a community cadre model. So I'll definitely talk about it, but what I would just like to say before I hand it over to the next speaker. So in the next approach, in phase 2, what we did is that what we felt is that this what we are doing, it needs to be done persistently. So persistency is actually the key word, and that's where from a frontline worker approach, we moved on to a community cadre approach where every village eventually should have a community cadre, a financial counselor, so to say, somebody who people can go to, asking for knowledge, for information, and helping them access different points in the community. So I'll talk about it more about the second phase. So yeah.
Thanks, Tanya. I just have a quick thing on the health finance scorecard. I was just monitoring another panel just before, and one product design person mentioned, and I thought it was good. The best form of nudging somebody is comparing. So if your neighbor has a very good health score, then you want one as well. So I think you can, whatever marketing you do, I think that's the one. So if scores are available in the community, definitely one way to bring it up is to almost, but I don't know the legality of this, I think. But I thought it was an interesting way to go about. So Ajit, thanks. I'll bring that to you. So we know that you represented Women's World Banking in the DFS working committee, and with the working committee, we're curious to know the take of supply side stakeholders on women agents. So can you discuss a little bit more at length your perspective on that? And I'd love you also to touch a little bit more on the policy side, I think, because Women's World Bank as well has been active on that. But if you can start with the first question.
Sure, Sharon. Thank you so much, and I would like to kind of congratulate all of us who are contributing towards, making women agent success in some or the other way. So, congratulations to all of us. BCFI team is also there, so congratulations to them as well. So on the BC committee, first of all, I would like to say that this was first committee ever constituted in decades by Department of Financial Services. And, so this in itself is a great achievement that DFS constituted this committee, brought in, top public sector banks into it. And Women's World Banking got an opportunity to be part of it, to represent, any women-related issues, challenges, opportunities, recommendations that we could propose from the field evidence that we have collected from the work that we've done with 3 public sector banks. So this in itself was an achievement. And when public sector bank, talk about women agents, they are not doing it for charity. They're not doing it for, because DFS has pushed them. It is because, they see business sense in them. They have a business case, and there are numbers to back it up. They know that 56% of women Jan Dhan accounts are women, which are around 230 odd million accounts. 92% are owned by public sector banks. Remaining 7 to 8% would be RRBs, regional rural banks, but 92% by public sector banks, and only about 10 to 12% are women agents. So definitely, so there is one case, there is this particular number there, but at the same time, they recognize from the Findex, which Sanya from World Bank also indicated yesterday, that there is only about 28% usage. These women accounts are using only about 28% of these financial services. So access is there, but adoption and usage is one big challenge. And based on some ground evidence that they have collected, they think that women agents can bridge this gap. They can bridge this gap of increasing the adoption and usage among individual women. Because what we have learned from the ground evidence also is, they are more patient in nature. They take more time to explain any product. That is number one. Number two is, mobility, in at least in the places where we were working in Uttar Pradesh, in rural UP. There, women have to take permission to go to a branch or to a BC point, to transact, and it takes a lot of time. The mobility issues are there; those kind of challenges are there. But having a BC Sakhi in the community, enables them to reduce that travel time. The mobility time gets reduced, and that is a benefit of having a BC Sakhi or the BC agent in the community. There are a lot of some of these evidences which are there, particularly available. And I'll quote one number that which have come from our research is, in that women agents completed 19% more transactions and had 45% higher conversations on a newly launched saving schemes that we did, called Jandhan Plus. And this is because agents are able to visit. These women agents were able to visit more freely, to these to their home, interact with them closely, and therefore they cherish their trust. And by being so entrenched in the society or in that service area, it gives them immense confidence and trust to basically have more women customers in their kitty. So clearly there is a business case. Of course, there are certain unique needs. These women have. We cannot kind of see them from a normal, BC agent point of view. There are unique needs. There are unique barriers. There are unique challenges, and therefore, a mix of differential commission structure and softer aspects, like Amit mentioned about softer aspects. Those will go handy to kind of make them more sustainable. I'll come to some certain recommendations that we have provided to these PSBs as well as policymakers. But coming back to, but quickly, on the policy thing, Sharon, that what we discussed, what we were able to kind of mandate was that at least 30% of the women BCs should be, should be the total workforce, should be part of the total workforce as women agents for these PSBs. So the good part is that all the PSBs were agreed on having 30% agents as their women agents. And so when I say this, it's like, say every month if they have to give 10 codes to BC agents, out of 10, 3 should be given to women, minimum 3. Some are also reaching to a 50% number. They're aiming for that number because they're seeing that ability, or I would say more sincerity in this particular channel. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Ajay. That's very extensive and very interesting. Since from your comments, I'll follow up with Gayatri then on some of the comments, because you had mentioned sort of like the, I guess, the business aspect, when you talk about creating business models and things like that. This ideal of even when they came up with the book Fortune at the base of the pyramid, can you do something in rural areas? So when you invite the private sector for these last mile delivery, what are the sustainability pricing points as well, as per your experience, given a lot of the models depend on things that you probably don't have agency over, like you can't, while empathy and trust and things are critical elements, you can't fabricate them, you can't manufacture them, but you probably can find proxies for them on the long term to scale it up. And the viability of models at the same time to achieve impact in social protection. Your take on that? That's a loaded question, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. We can't manufacture some of these things like trust and empathy, which is why in the Hagdarshak model, it starts from the community. We don't try to implant people from outside into the community. We try and, create that ecosystem from within. That's our approach. So, right from our, supervisory level, the managerial level, we try and ensure that they come from the community. So it's the trust that the beneficiaries and citizens have on the agent, and the agent needs to have on the organization, right? So all of that has to sort of play out. In terms of various models that has worked for us, I think the one that you were presenting is what we call as the livelihood model, where the work that the agent does on the ground, she gets compensated for that by collecting a nominal fee from the citizens. And there is nothing that the organization really needs to pay them for that work. And but the flip side of that is, because of the trust and empathy that they have, and I was just talking with Tanya here, they don't want to collect that money, right? That trust is more important for them than actually to go and collect that money. So then even capturing the work becomes difficult, right? I mean, and sustainability becomes difficult, right? I mean, not everything can be based on goodwill. There has to be, like, Ajit was saying, a business model to it, right? So ultimately the agent needs to make money, and we are a for profit private limited company. We need to make some money out of it. So while it's all great to work on that trust and and the empathy factor, it's important to also move beyond and look at the business behind it. So that's the livelihood model. We also have what we call as a direct implementation model, where we tell the agent, don't collect money from the citizen. Collect it. We will pay you. We will compensate you for that, right? So uh, again, based on performance, right? It's still a completely variable model, where for the work done on the ground, we tell the agent, we will train you, we will handhold you, we will provide the tech support and all of that. And we will also then compensate you for the work that you have done on the ground, and that need not be collected from the citizen. So that's the direct implementation model. We are also now sort of beginning to pilot what we call as the B2C model through various, innovations that we have done. One of them being the Yojana card, which Aniket also sort of referred to during the Shark Tank pitch. We have set up physical centers called Yojana Kendra, which is a replica of the CSC, right? And when everyone was talking about CSC, I was also sort of thinking of how much of government schemes actually get done at the CSC, right? Where does that mobilization really happen? When a citizen walks into the CSC center, right? There may be a girl child in his house, in his or her house, who's eligible for a scholarship, who's eligible for the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, right? They don't know about it, right? So there is that model of even creating that awareness, because we see the benefit of creating that awareness, right? That just gets lost in translation, honestly. Today we are working with the government of Rajasthan, where that discovery of schemes, what we call as a screening process, which you also mentioned in your presentation, right, is integrated with the e-Mitra portal, right, where we are encouraging the kiosk owners, to the CSC owners, to screen the citizen, at least tell them what they are eligible for. Let's start creating the awareness. We'll worry about the servicing of that later, right? So there is that model of just screen, right? And so there is that will be a B2C model, right? Because the citizen has to pay for that screening. So I spoke about direct implementation. I spoke about livelihood. We are now trying to pilot the B2C through these kind of innovations, tech integrations, Yojana Card, Yojana Kendra, where the citizen is expected to pay and the agent is expected to transfer a minimal percentage of that cost back to the organization, right? So that is sustainability for the agent and for us. That strengthens the engagement between us. For that to happen, backward integrations have to happen, tech integrations have to happen, and a very, very, you spoke about the backward integration, right? How do you make them earn more in lesser period, right? Today, to fulfill a pension form and to fulfill a scholarship form takes 4 hours, right? Include end to end. To fill it up, go submit it, follow up, and do all of that stuff. How do we get them to do that in a place in 10 minutes, right? Then they do more, they earn more. When they earn more, they stick around more. And this has to become mainstream employment and not just a secondary source of income that will then spell sustainability for us. So these are some of the models that we are sort of trying out to grow and scale.
Thanks so much, Ragat. I think this is a good segue for Tanya. Looking at this targeted capacity building of local women cadres, actually to increase the participation in labor force, one of the gaps, but as well you have a high touch model which is not too digitized as well. It has all the components of building trust in on-person thing. Do you want to elaborate on that model? Yeah.
Sure, I think Gayatri made it quite simple because and there is a lot of things which are alike. So definitely yes. Now I move into the phase two when we moved on into the doorstep delivery model. So our approach has been continues to be being consistently remain consistently invested with the cadre. You know, while you're investing your time in terms of developing the knowledge capacity building of the cadre, of course do not forget about the beneficiary. So we first touched upon the beneficiary side in phase one, and in phase two when we launched the cadre. So what we realized, yes, what Gayatri just mentioned, trust is a very important element. uh, our programs have seen a very high stickiness, and I have to really talk about the batch which we launched first in 2018 in Assam. So we consistently invested upon this cadre for a period of 3 years, more than 3 years, and in Rajasthan it's almost quarter to 3 years. So what we have seen is that when we are investing regularly on the cadre, which means our process is that the selection criterias are very alike to what you just showed, Sharon, in your study. Uh, After the Sakhi is onboarded, what we have done, and that's one interesting part which we have digitized, the toolkits which we did in phase one, we have digitized that into, again, a Android-based application. So once the Sakhi gets onboarded, along with the onboarding training and induction, she gets the access to an Android application which has the digitized tools. Along with that, we are also providing a toolkit, a physical toolkit to the Sakhi. So that's the first part. Along with that, what the Sakhi is constantly being guided by a team of field officers who are constantly providing a training to the Sakhis on the local schemes, financial inclusion schemes, social security schemes. So as the Sakhi starts learning it, she starts providing service in the community. And once she reaches almost like a 5 to 6 months, she has been there with the program, we introduce her. So 5 to 6 months, why? Because that's enough time if she has to drop out, because she understands what the nature of the program is. We don't pay her anything from the start, so she has to earn for herself. She sees that as an alternative livelihood model. She earns for herself. The more she is able to play in volumes, the better the income is. So that's the other area, and that's where, to play in volumes, the trust factor works. Even if she's nominally charging few, she will be able to pick up. So while you play in volumes, you also need to have the knowledge of the upcoming latest schemes. You need to have full knowledge. So as she progresses around 5th to 6th month, then we introduce her to a online certification program, Gram Shakti. And that's a LMS program which we have conceptualized. And the idea was, again, if you have to have financial counselors at the village level, you need to go phygital. You need to, and to be able to scale, you need to have the online mechanism. So we introduce her to the Gram Shakti online certification program, a very vigorous program where she has to spend almost 3 to 4 months, takes her through different modules. She has to follow the course curriculum. She has to submit assessments. She gets evaluated, she gets scored, and then at the end of the certification program, we acknowledge that, give her the certificate. So this entire process, along with, she continuously has that experiential learning, because as she is, going through this capacity building program, she is offering services in the community. She is constantly understanding how to pitch about a product. The product is available till the CAC center or till the e-mitra, but you need a demand aggregator, and that's where the Sakhi is playing the role. So eventually the Sakhi is working with all the service, all the service players in the ecosystem, all the product points, but you need to get that knowledge to the last mile beneficiary, and the last mile beneficiary has a FHC, knows, so when she starts through that process, she herself gets into this learning process. She understands that it's important that she educates the beneficiary and builds that depth. So I think it's both ways, and our experience has been saying that this helps us bring in the stickiness, stability. Sakhis, as I speak of, we have 3,500 plus Sakhis who are working across 4,500 villages, because we start with one Sakhi, one village, and then she starts servicing neighboring villages. And almost revenue generated of more than 8 lakhs, out of which, and not 8 lakhs, sorry, goes into crores, outreach of 8 lakhs, and almost out of that outreach, 7 lakhs, more than 7 lakhs have been provided one or the other linkage. The other point, just quickly would want to mention, in terms of, as Gayatri was mentioning and Amit was mentioning, these are Sakhis. What they have been doing is that they are providing the products in the financial inclusion space and also the social security. So both in a combination, she has more in a basket, to offer, and people get another access point in the village, So that's how we have worked upon it.
Thanks, Anya. That's great. I have become absorbed in the conversation. So, this is great. I think one key thing is that stickiness comes with a lot of patience and coordinated efforts, I think that's one of the key. Well, you have digital account very quickly. And these two models, my understanding now it has to be in parallel, like you mentioned. I think our panel is almost closed quickly. I just will have two quick questions for Ajit and Amrit. I'll start with Amrit. What I warned him, everyone asked me about this question is about measurement. So when I mentioned this, he said there should be a question we should ask to you. But because we need to understand, what is success. So, and because you've been here for a while, you have the intuition. So, what is required to measure success? I'll have one for you. And Ajit, I'd love you to close on sort of like the G20 presidency, where World Women's Bank is working on a more strategic perspective. Then we can take questions from the crowd. Yeah.
Oh, that's a pain point. uh, First of all, culture. Who wants to be measured? So I think that's has to be embedded in the DNA, and people who are responsible for implementation are little vary. So that comfort has to grow. That this is not to find faults in how you do it, but this is to learn more. Uh, and there is so much that can happen. So I would say there are certain easier things but are not happening for very long. Sex disaggregated data. This is so difficult to come by. While this is possible to do, this would help immensely. Or for that matter, age bracket. It is there in the CVS of the bank. You know, Culling out that information is not a challenge, but somehow it's not happening. Second, we often, at least what I have seen and the challenge that I face is, it's easier to measure input and activities progress, not as much uh, output, outcome, and impact. That theory of change we always struggle, but overall, at a sector level, I think that we need to inculcate that this is useful for all of us. JDY website today doesn't show male versus female customer data, which was there for very long. Now it is not there. Who's yeah? Who cares about that? So, which is why I said I don't have a very straightforward answer. But this really helps a lot. Second point, I think. Um, technology allows us, and there is such good work that is happening because of technology. One thing as at an ecosystem level, what we could do, both in terms of measurement and leveraging technology, is build these bridges at the last mile. So what I mean to say, if I as a BC agent, my interest is in doing transactional business and make revenue out of it, I should know that I can pass on a customer who's probably good to get a loan to somebody who can create a health card. Even at the local level, that is not happening, and if that is happening, that doesn't get measured. The effect at the ecosystem gets lost. It may be happening, in a random manner. That is something we need to know. For example, again, Hug Darshika providing some kind of a service should be able to pass on this person to an BC agent and say your transactional service 3 miles down the line is possible. And if we can measure how this cross sell or lead generation has led to ABC, leading to impact. I know this sounds very, very, esoteric, but that is something that would be great to have if we can.
Thanks a lot. Very well answered, everything. So, Ajit, I'll close with you. I know that Women's World Banking is representing the financial inclusion track in G20. Can you elaborate on that strategically? Maybe just a few minutes, and we can take one or two questions from the crowd.
Hello. Yeah, sure, Sharon. But Amit's point was quite interesting on measurement. I would just like to take a minute on that. And I completely, understand that whatever gets measured gets tracked, and whatever gets tracked gets achieved. And therefore, for example, even if we agreed on a 30% women BC workforce, until unless we kind of make it as a policy reform, say that 30% to be achieved by 2026, and we track progress quarterly. That 20% have been achieved as of now, 25% have been achieved as of now, 30% now target achieved for 2027. Now let's extend the target to 50%. And of the 30%, how many are activation? How many are activated? How many are earning above 5,000? So some of these things, because we always talk about the sustainability of women agents, and until unless we make some of these sub policy reforms of for these women agents, for their performance as well as for their sustainability, we'll not be able to kind of measure it, and we'll only talk very anecdotally during in the next few years. So that's one I wanted to kind of share. And of course, some quick policy recommendations that I would like to kind of share for the practitioners is, I talked about the differential commission structure. So I understand that there is some level of stipend which is given to BC Sakhis, like a 4,000 rupee for a 6 month. But in our experience, we have seen that it takes them at least a year or so to completely get entrenched into the culture and entrenched into the society, acquire customers. So can we make a performance based differential structure? For example, after 6 months, can we give them 2,000 rupee to do? But for that, they have to earn it. So they have to do a 50 transaction worth 100 rupee each, and that could be stepped down in a phase-wise manner after a year or so. So if we can think about some of those aspects like differential commission structure, reward structure, liquidity management, because there are mobility issues. So can a male member become can they give a sub KOID to a male member or to somebody or to her friend who can manage the business while she is doing the household work as well. So reward recognition, training and mentoring. Again, what we have seen is these women may not have smartphones. Their husbands or their son would have smartphones, and they come in the evening or afternoon. So the training over smartphones around evening time or afternoon time is more preferable, for these women compared to a morning slot or something. So some of these demand side aspects, if we could take into considerations, vehicle loan of say 25,000 rupee, can it be given by the public sector banks on a collateral free basis or at a lesser interest rate? So some of these points I wanted to kind of just put in, and we have kind of recommended these to the banks that we are working with, and they are actually thinking of implementing some of these points. And now coming to the G20 work stream, this year, G20 work stream, our PM has clearly mentioned women economic empowerment is one of the largest, enabler for this particular G20. And GPFI, which is Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, is a financial inclusion track within the G20, and there the larger subject is leveraging digital public infrastructure for enhancing financial inclusion and productivity gains. And who better than our women agents can actually leverage that? There is a clear there's a clear case of having financial literacy, women economic empowerment in this G20, and all the members, all the 20 countries, they are keen to kind of have gender as a cross-cutting theme, not just as a cross-cutting theme, as a main theme in all the deliverables. So with that, I would like to kind of end and say that G20's theme, which is Vasu Reva Kutubakam, and one Earth, one family, one future, which aims for equitable future for all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ajay. I think we crossed our time, but I'll just take a few minutes if there's one or two questions that people have. And I hear a lot of talking in the crowd so closely. Yeah, seriously.
Thank you. That was a absolutely wonderful session. Very, very nice to hear on the ground experiences from all of you. I do have a question about your average figure of 587. And you said there's a lot of variation. So uh, even if it's just the average, I think we need to do 10 times more if you really want those women. And Ajit, what you said was absolutely on the dot, and I don't want to repeat that. That was music to my ears. But my question, and you are also here from BCFI, my question is about, are we really thinking of the voices of these women? Is anybody doing organization? Are they becoming, because when they come to the federation, the corporate VCs or whoever is employing them goes to the federation, they do not have direct access to federating, and they do not, or they're not organized, they don't have a voice. Is anybody trying to work in that field and actually trying to get their voices out and their concerns to be voiced by them rather than by us as organizations? Thank you.
Question is for you. I don't want to answer on our behalf, but this 587 is not BC agent income. This is the Hak Darshika's work. Yeah. From
Okay.
that stream of activity where Hak Darshika is supposed to tell you are you can be connected to these government services. For that stream of work, she's earning that, not the agent banking. But your second point, my short answer would be Sampark, but it's for Mr. Kulkarni.
Okay. I'm happy to pass this back.
Yeah, the first aspect is well about the income. It's anyone who collects data, and they feel very difficult to collect data on income. Much easier on expenses. We're more happy to boast about what we spend than what we earn. Averages, and my sense is that when I have to explain India to an outside world, I would say anything. India is anything but its average. So you have to look at the extremes and both sides because you have to look at the distribution of things. So I agree with you, they need to be better models. But I do think that similar to how people have trust and empathy, and like Gayatri was mentioning, and I observe that as well, these women want to help their community, so they want to, and they didn't charge money actually. And I think a good portion of that is hidden free labor that they just gave to, so they might have given free labor to say, okay, I'll do it for my neighbor, but the neighbor comes, they give 40 rupees, but the neighbor's neighbor wants it, they have no money. Okay, the friend of my friend is my friend type of thing. So I think that's a lot, and that's another topic of study, you know. I think it's a pro and a con, and that's the power of villages as well. That's why we're trying to better understand. But I also think that trust and empathy should not be taken for granted as well. So then that comes as well as how do you balance that out? The voices of women as well. I think there are many organizations in the self-help group as well. I think what happens is I often find, I will not talk in the space of NLM, but when I see women's collective, there is so many things that are poured on to women's collective in a sense, no? So, and I study a lot of work in entrepreneurship, for example, and what I see is that women in collectives are expected to A, get loans, B, get information on health and nutrition, C, help the community, D, do all of these things, no? And on top of that, every time they want to do these entrepreneurial training, I said, don't do it to the collectives, do an entrepreneurship training as well, because I also see groups of men and they're called entrepreneurs. It's an entrepreneurship study. They do not give training for nutrition during men's entrepreneurship studies and things like that. So I think, to your point, the strength of women is also their greatest, maybe disadvantage in a sense, because it's a good platform for that. I would hesitate to talk too much about NRLM, self-help groups, and the other ones, because it's not my area of expertise, but this is pure observation. But I do agree that anywhere it works better when voices come from bottom up. I think in principle philosophy, yeah.
Yeah, Sharon, and ma'am, to your question, definitely it is being heard, in the committee that, I was representing. It was the first time that they also had, women agents as one of the important topics to be added, and all the male members, they appreciated, they acknowledged this particular area, and they are hearing from voices from SRLMs. So SRLMs are becoming the voices for these women at least. Now I know there are different categories of women. They don't have the platforms. All of them don't have the SRLM platforms. But at least the women who are part of these collectives or SHG groups, they are being heard. It will take some time. It is like Swachh Bharat Mission. It takes time to get into that behavior. So we are getting there, but.
After the session, you can have a separate discussion with her and she'll tell you why SRLM cannot or should not be the voice.
Sure.
So my 2 cents is they might be heard, but they're diluted if you put too many things. But that could also, we can all talk around the table. Maybe we should just take one more question and everyone can go for lunch. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Mansi from Microsoft Consulting. So my question is for Gayatri. First of all, congratulations, ma'am, for the recent round. So, you very interestingly talked about the continuous communication with the agents. So, my question to you is, how do we ensure and do this communication continuously? Essentially, how should it go? And it's also read and understood by the agents. And it doesn't get overwhelming for them to sort of grasp that much of information. You work around multiple of government services. So it shouldn't get overwhelming for them to understand, and also it should ensure the stickiness and reduce the iteration. So some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim that we've solved that problem in entirety, but we are definitely trying to address it. We've broken it, we have at least broken down the problem, we've acknowledged the problem, and we are trying to address it, step by step. First of all, I don't think overwhelming happens, at least not in our case, because all our work starts, it's called community work, right? While there may be 13,000 government schemes, what is relevant for that community will just be 20-30 odd, right? So it starts there. There is a lot of groundwork that happens beforehand to ensure that what is fed as information and knowledge to the agent is absolutely relevant for them, right? For the community that they are going to serve. So there's a lot of needs assessment baseline work that happens, right? The next is, see, when we talk about sustainability and when we talk about, continuously serving a community, we need to understand that there are only certain costs that can go down, right? The tech cost can go down, the training cost could taper down, it will not eliminate. The hand holding cost, the support cost has to be built in for a longer period of time, right? We cannot assume that I'll pull the plug after 2 years and things will work on its own. Time and again we have seen that doesn't happen. That's what we saw in iWage also, in the CG project, right? We need to be able to factor in cost tapering, of course, but definitely we need to factor it in. So that's at a planning level itself, right? in terms of continuous engagement, we need to understand that there are the monetary aspects of it, and then there are the non-monetary aspects of it, right? We need, at least when we work with women agents, most of our agents are women. It is not just about the money, it is about the recognition, it's about the feeling of belonging to something larger which is outside of their own household and family, right? To be able to come out and get that recognition. So continuous reward recognition programs, we didn't we haven't learned this on day one, we are slowly learning that. So today we have pockets of success within Hagdarshak, where we have been able to engage these kinds of continuous engagement, and we have seen that these women agents stay with us longer than probably what we saw in Chhattisgarh, right? So these are things. The bite-sized approach of training, right? Break it down over a period of time, continuous refreshers, capacity building, the financial literacy of the agent herself, and Tanya would agree with me there, right? I mean, for her to take that money in her hand and to decide what to do with it, right? Today, we don't onboard an agent if she doesn't have her own bank account, right? We refuse to take the bank account of her spouse or anyone else in the family. So she should have her bank account, that money should go to her, and she should decide what to do with that money. So we have enough success factors of, they becoming leaders. So we don't start with SHG leaders, right? Our Hagdarshaks become those leaders. They become kiosk owners, they become CSC owners. Some have even go ahead and to stand in elections. But these are all, I'm not saying these are scalable models, not yet, but pockets of success are there from which we can learn. So largely that's how we are trying to address that issue.
You just add one point and we can close after.
Yes, and adding to what Mansi's, your point also, Gayatri, that marketing push is also one thing that we also work with these women agents. That we have a training, we have a camp toolkit, not toolkit, it's a kit basically. It ranges from 800 rupee to 2000 rupee, and there is a poster, there is a camp script, there are certain elements about how to pitch a product. So there are a lot of theories around what the product is, but when you come to actual market, how to pitch a savings product, how to pitch a PMJJBY, PMSBY, APY, these are all very tough products. Apart from cash in cash out, all the other products are quite tough. So hence we have kind of made that kit, and there are certain collaterals that we keep in that kit in terms of we have innovated with an insurance selfie point kind of a collateral, which is more like जो बीमा जो अपने परिवार से करे प्यार वो बीमा से ना करे इनकार. Just giving an example. So there are some of these things that we are using to kind of attract customers to at least inquire about what is this PMJJBY, SBY, what is there in it. So that ready-made kit gives women a chance to acquire new customers, go to the market with some arms and ammunition. So apart from what you said, Gayatri, rewards, recognition, training, bit-size training, all these are quite important. And I think practicality is also very important in terms of having these arms and ammunitions in hand, going to the village, putting an umbrella, talking to the customers, putting the poster, and having a camp script to kind of execute that.
Thanks a lot, Ajit. So I think it's time to go to lunch session. I want to thank the panelists. It's very, very interesting, non-easy topic, and very complimentary. A lot of learnings from here. Thank you for the crowd as well, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed. That was our wonderful moderator, Ms. Sharon Badu, wonderfully conducting and concluding this session.